Seraphine Voss had a gift for disappearing. Not in the magical sense, not yet. She simply had a way of standing in a room full of people and taking up so little space that most of them forgot she was there at all. She kept her eyes low. She kept her voice soft. She kept her opinions tucked somewhere behind her ribs, where nobody would ever ask her to share them. She had been doing it her whole life. It was easier that way. As an Omega in a world built by and for alphas, small was safe. Small meant no one challenged you. Small meant no one noticed you enough to cause you harm. Seraphine had perfected small, the way some people perfect cooking or carpentry, through daily practice, through quiet dedication, through years and years of deciding that being unseen was better than being seen and found lacking. She never expected the world to disagree with her about that. The Mate Rite happened once every decade. All unmated Omegas between the ages of 18 and 25 were required to present themselves before the Alpha King in the Great Hall of the Central Keep. It was not romantic, it was political. The king would walk the line, and if a bond sparked, that invisible, biological pull that wolves had no control over, a match would be made, packs would be united, alliances would be strengthened. The Omega in question would become the most powerful woman on the continent. Seraphine had not planned to attend. She had planned, specifically, to slip through the eastern gate while everyone else was dressing and finding their way to the Great Hall. She had worn her good boots, or what she thought were her good boots, until she got them on and noticed a small crack along the left sole. And she had done her hair up, mostly, except for the pieces that kept escaping around her face. She had her bag. She had a plan. The plan had not accounted for Elder Maren standing in the corridor. Elder Maren was the oldest wolf in the region, possibly the oldest wolf alive, and she had the eyes of someone who had seen every trick a person could try and found all of them mildly amusing. She looked at Seraphine. She looked at the bag. She looked at the eastern gate visible through the window at the end of the hall. "The ceremony," Elder Maren said pleasantly, "is the other direction." Seraphine went the other direction. She arrived last. Every other Omega was already standing in a neat line across the center of the Great Hall, wearing proper dresses and perfect hair and expressions of careful, practiced calm. The hall was enormous. Stone walls, high windows, packed with pack leaders and their families, all of them watching the line with the focused attention of people who understood exactly what this event meant for the balance of power on the continent. Seraphine slipped into the end of the line, smoothed her hair back with one hand, and stared at the floor. She heard the doors at the far end of the hall open. She did not look up. She felt him before she saw him. That was the part she had not expected. The sudden, sharp awareness of someone entering the room. Not just someone powerful, though he was that. Not just someone large, though she would learn that too, but someone connected. Connected to her, somehow, in a way that made no logical sense, and every biological sense. A pull in her chest like a thread being drawn taut. She made the mistake of looking up. He was already looking at her. King Calum Drave was exactly what stories had made him. Broad, dark-haired, carrying authority the way other men carried weight, like something they had long since stopped noticing. He walked the line with his hands behind his back, and his expression neutral, pausing before each Omega, waiting, moving on. The hall was so quiet that Seraphine could hear her own heartbeat. He reached her. He stopped. The bond snapped into place between them with the force of something that had been waiting a long time for this exact moment. She felt it. Every wolf in the room felt it. She could see it, in the way they shifted, the way the air changed, the slight collective intake of breath. The bond was real. The bond was powerful. The bond was the kind that pack elders wrote about in old books using words like sacred and fated. Calum looked at her. He took in the cracked boot, the escaping hair, the plain dress she had borrowed from her neighbor because she had not owned anything appropriate and had not wanted to spend money on something she had planned to avoid. He looked at her the way someone looks at something that doesn't fit where it's been placed. He said one word. Rejected. The hall went completely still. Seraphine had prepared for this, in the way you prepare for things you tell yourself probably won't happen, but secretly believe always will. She had a whole speech ready. No, not a speech. She had a feeling ready. Something quiet and dignified and composed. She had planned to nod and walk away, and not let a single thing show on her face. What she had not prepared for was the physical reality of it. The bond, when severed by rejection, was supposed to dissolve. That was what she had been told. That was what happened. The word was said, the connection broke, and both wolves were free, clean, finished. The bond did not dissolve. It went quiet. It compressed itself, the way a person compresses their breath before diving underwater. Not gone, just held. She could still feel it, a low and steady hum beneath the silence. Something patient. She nodded once. She turned. She walked out of the great hall with her back straight and her face empty, and her cracked boot making a small soft sound against the stone floor with every step. Nobody said anything as she left. She walked through the corridor, through the eastern gate she had been trying to reach all morning, through the outer yard, and the open field, and the line of trees at the edge of the unclaimed forest. She walked until the trees closed around her, and the noise of the keep fell away, and she was alone. Then she sat down in the dirt, and she let her hands shake. She sat there a long time. The bond pain was real. It was a physical ache, deep and specific, located somewhere between her throat and her sternum. She breathed through it. She waited for it to fade. It didn't fade. It just settled, as she had noticed before, like something patient, finding a comfortable position, like something that intended to stay. She did not understand that yet. She slept in the forest that night. She had her bag, which had a blanket and 2 days of food, because she had planned to be gone before anyone could bring her back. She built a small fire, ate half of what she had, and stared at the flames until her eyes were heavy. When she woke, the first wolf was sitting across the fire from her. She did not scream. She thought about it. She considered it seriously for approximately 3 full seconds, and then she noticed that the wolf had not moved toward her, had not made a sound, had not done anything threatening at all. It simply sat. Its fur was the color of a sky just before the last of the light left it. Deep gray, moving toward dark blue. And it was larger than any wolf she had ever seen. Not monstrous, just very, deeply, fundamentally large, in the way of things that have been alive long enough to become certain of themselves. It watched her with eyes the color of pale river water. She watched it back. After a long time, she reached out her hand, very slowly, and touched the ridge of its back. Every tree within half a mile went white at the bark. She pulled her hand back. She looked at the trees. She looked at the wolf. The wolf looked at her with the expression of someone who has known a thing for a long time and is not surprised to see it proven. She did not tell anyone. The second wolf came the next afternoon, fire-red, heat radiating from its fur like summer stone, sitting just outside the edge of her small camp and waiting to be noticed. The third arrived before dawn on the third day, the color of deep water, and where it walked the ground beneath its paws was briefly, gently wet. The fourth at noon, stone gray, almost invisible against the rock face at the edge of the clearing. The fifth, with the wind, on the evening of the fourth day, its pale fur lifting and falling, even when the air was completely still. 5 wolves. 5 ancient, impossible storied wolves, each one a creature she had grown up hearing about in the way you hear about things people no longer believe are real. The sacred wolves, the 5 elemental guardians that the old books claimed would appear only at the emergence of a ruler so chosen that even the world itself felt the need to make an announcement. She sat in the middle of them and ate the last of her food and tried very hard to think about something else. Elder Maren arrived on the 5th morning. She walked into the clearing, looked at Seraphine surrounded by 5 sacred wolves, looked at each wolf individually, looked back at Seraphine and said, "Ah, there it is." Then she sat down and made tea on the small fire, because Elder Maren was a woman who believed that all major events were better processed with something warm in your hands. "How long have you known?" Seraphine asked. "Since the day you were born." Elder Maren handed her a cup. "You came into the world so quietly. No crying, just opened your eyes and looked around, like you were assessing the situation before deciding whether to commit to it." She paused. "I thought it best to let the situation develop at its own pace." Seraphine looked at the wolves. The wolves looked at her. "What do I do?" she asked. "Generally," Elder Maren said, "things of this nature do the doing. You simply need to remain present." Word traveled the way impossible things traveled. Not slowly, not quietly, but in pieces, each piece landing somewhere and starting a new set of questions. By the 6th day, the scouts the Alpha King had quietly sent into the unclaimed forest had sent back their reports. By the 7th, Calum had stopped believing the reports were confused or exaggerated. By the morning of the 8th day, he rode out himself. She heard his horse before she saw him. She was sitting at the edge of the clearing, her back against the large gray wolf, which had become something of a habit. It was warm and solid, and did not have opinions about anything she did. The other 4 were settled around the clearing in various arrangements of dignified rest. Elder Maren had gone to collect more firewood and had not come back, which Seraphine suspected was intentional. Calum appeared at the tree line. He stopped when he saw them. All 5 wolves turned their heads toward him, at exactly the same moment. His horse took 2 steps back. He held it steady, but it cost him visible effort. He stood there for a moment, looking at the scene in front of him, looking at her. She watched him work through it, the disbelief, the recalculation, the thing that followed recalculation when a person realized that everything they had been certain about had been resting on a foundation that was not as solid as they thought. He crossed the clearing on foot. His horse he left at the tree line. The wolves watched him pass. None of them moved to stop him. They already knew what he was to her. They had always known. That was the thing about ancient creatures. They could see the whole shape of a thing that humans and wolves could only see the edges of. He stopped a few feet away from her and stood there, and she looked up at him, and she did not move. She had run out of small. There was nothing left in her that wanted to take up less space. "I made a mistake," he said. His voice was low and even, and it cost him something she could see clearly. "You did," she said. "I saw what you looked like," he said, "and I decided it told me everything. I was wrong." "You were wrong," she agreed. He was quiet for a moment. The firewolf, settled to Seraphine's left, exhaled slowly, a small bright breath. "I felt the bond," he said. "Even after I spoke, it didn't go away." "I know. I told myself it had. I know that too." He sat down across from her. Not on a log, not on a rock, in the dirt, the way she had been sitting, the way you sit when you have stopped trying to hold a shape that impresses people and started trying to just be in the place you are. He sat in the dirt of the unclaimed forest, surrounded by 5 sacred wolves and 1 Omega, who had no reason left to make anything easy for him, and he told her the truth. Not all of it, enough of it. Enough for the space between them to shift from cold to something that was not yet warm, but was moving in that direction. She listened. She did not fill the silences. She did not offer him comfort he hadn't earned. She simply listened, and when he finished, she nodded once, and they sat together in the forest as the light changed, and the wolves breathed slowly around them. The coronation, when it came, was not a ceremony. There was no throne room, no council, no proclamation read aloud from old law. The 5 sacred wolves simply rose, one by one, and circled her, and from the fire wolf came the crown, a living thing, part flame, and part ancient bone, and part something that had no name in any language she knew, and it settled onto her head with the gentleness of something that had been waiting for exactly this moment, for a very long time. Every wolf bond on the continent felt it. In the keeps and the villages, in the forests and the field camps, every wolf went still for exactly 1 breath. Then, life resumed. But something in the architecture of the world had shifted, quietly, permanently, the way the ground shifts after water has been moving through it long enough to find its true path. Seraphine stood in the unclaimed forest in her cracked boot and her borrowed dress. The leaf she had never removed still caught in her hair, and she wore a crown that had not been made for any throne. She had not been built for this. She had been built as this. The difference, she was learning, was everything.